the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. I really did not want to have to be that guy. Just believe me, I did not want to have to be that. Well, okay, let's back up a minute. All right, so I had an opportunity to go to a place I wanted to go for a very long time. I talk about it in my book, the Politics of Heaven. It's not out yet. It's coming up. At this point, I'm shopping it around, talking to people about it. And so, as I explain things, I have to go into a deep well of information to explain it. So I had a rare opportunity. It was with my family to go to the Johnson Humrick House Museum. Now, anybody who likes archaeology, especially in Ohio, knows that that's kind of it's a small museum just north of Newark, the great Newark site right here, which I am very passionate about. It's on my shirt. It's a significant site. I really like the shirt. Got the shirt at the Circle Earthworks here. This is how it used to look. There's an actual gift shop right here, a little store. People complain that it blocks off the sunrise into this area to this day. The desecration of indigenous people is a thing. This site, I think, is one of the greatest sites on planet Earth. For those who don't know it, there's an avenue like these, and these curses, these avenues they have are actual mounds built up, and these avenues often guide the soul of the dead or spirits to align with astrological alignments. Here it talks about the 18.5 years of lunar observations that this would record, and where the moon would end up at different places set in these specific circles. A lot of stuff going on at the Newark Earthworks. So this wonderful Johnson Humrick House Museum is just north of the Newark site, out kind of in the middle of nowhere. I hate to say nowhere because it's actually quite nice there. But they've done a lot of great contributions to archaeology over a long period of time. And years ago, I bought these replicas of what they call the Holy Stones, and they are known for holding the original Holy Stones, which I'll talk about here in just a second. I've talked about these before. We'll get into it in a minute. I found there a great treasure. This is the Wilmington tablet, obviously found in Wilmington, Ohio. Currently, the real tablet can be found in the Museum of Natural History in Columbus, over by Ohio State. All right, off the highway. It's in there. There is, so I'll find it quickly. I've talked about it many, many, many times. A lot of math in these earthworks. A lot we don't know. And that's what this topic is today. All right. So that is a picture of what they call the Cincinnati tablet. And it used to be on display at the Cincinnati Museum Center. That right there. You can see this is the Cincinnati tablet. This is the Wilmington tablet. And this was found in a mound. This was found in a mound that was over by the UPS downtown Cincinnati, off Mound Street. Always in Columbus, there's a Mound Street. There's a Mound Street in Lebanon. There's mounds all over the place that we named after mounds we found there. And in some of these mounds, like the one in downtown Cincinnati, this one from Wilmington, this is an exact replica of the one that was found inside the mound. It's kind of an ID card for the person likely that was buried in the mound. It's got engravings on the side of it, which I've never seen before. I've only seen a top-down picture of this. Never seen edges, the sides. It's quite an astonishing replica. And I found it at the wonderful museum there. I found it at the Johnson Humrick House Museum. And it's just a difficult name because the Johnson brothers bought these holy stones from David Wyrick years and years ago. And I got all the books out. There's quite a story here, and this is why I have to talk about it. So let me take a minute and show you, as because my daughter has, everybody in my family knows I've talked about these things extensively for a very long time. I think they're one of the greatest mysteries in archaeology on planet Earth. I talk about that a lot. I talk about the Wendover people. I'll get into all that in a minute. But the actual stones, these are replicas of the stones that were found. This one was found at this earthworks in the middle of this octagon. This area here has been a golf course for a long time. They put a golf course within this entire 18-hole golf course within this mound structure, which obviously has all these sacred geometry and astronomy as they give credit to the Hopewell people for it. This is around 500 BC to 50 AD, around that period. Around the Second Temple period in Jerusalem, as we're talking about biblical foundations. So as we came to this museum, I was quite geeking out. It's a great little museum, not big. Built along the old Erie Canal, just 10 miles or so north of, well, actually further than that, of Newark. So it's quite a ways up there. This stone was supposedly found by David Wyrick here, in the middle of all that, in a box that dated back to 50 AD. So the claim has been that these were hoaxes, and I'll get into that in a minute, and they're on display, and the display tries, because they're very archaeology based, and I tend to like all those people, as I've said before. That's why I did not want to be that person to say what I'm getting ready to say. So when we arrived at the museum, this is me going upstairs to where the exhibit is and finding the museum. My daughter recorded me going up. I didn't tell her to. She just did it. Just recorded me. So here it is. They're over there.
Where?
Right there.
Oh, those?
Yeah. This is it. These right here. These are the ruins. And this is me walking around with a couple of my grandchildren. Not all of them were there, but a few of them were. And they were geeking out with me because they know Grandpa likes these kinds of things. And that's all I talk about, usually. If I talk about something that's not something that they bring up, if they get me talking about things, it's always these topics. And we were walking in this area here. Here's the entrance to it. And the areas I'm pointing out as I'm walking are at these areas. This is a ditch dug out that used to hold water. It's quite ceremonial and quite extravagant. Anyway, I was going to say, these avenues, there's now a huge city. There's lots of housing developments all in this region. This whole area is covered with houses and restaurants and things. This is separated by about 1.25 miles. And the canal and a lot of Newark is built right over top of all this stuff. The main road that runs by this runs right through this ceremonial area. So all this is pretty much gone. Some sections of this part remain, But most of this has been developed. All of this has been developed. There's lots of restaurants and McDonald's and things like that along the roads that run over to this old golf course. The golf course is currently shut down. Can't imagine what they're going to do there. It's not like you can develop the land because it's this extraordinary. This is as amazing of an archaeological site as what the pyramids would be. When I talk about Serpent Mound being extraordinary, this is one of the extraordinary sites of Ohio. This right here, and it's sort of it's a long story to explain how it ended up in this state. But currently, all you can really see of it is this. As the golf courses have been shut down, we stood on a platform, and if you see me, I'll show a clip of me climbing some steps to get on a platform. They have a raised platform, actually right here, in this between this circle and this octagon. There's a raised platform that you can look out over the expanse of this whole thing, and this holy stone. A lot of people attribute it to a Masonic symbol. I look at this and I see the keyhole tombs in Japan, Osaka specifically, Solomon, keys of Solomon. This is kind of an ancient keyhole symbol. It's an interesting, but a lot of archaeologists say it's a fake because this isn't the kind of thing that indigenous people would make, right? So on it has Hebrew text, referencing the Ten Commandments. That's what this Hebrew is. And they say this is a fake because the Hebrew is a more modern rendition of it. And there are mistakes made in it. So this is the only kind of Hebrew thing found in North America. But these are particularly mysterious because they were found by a guy that went around, did a lot of surveying, David Wyrick. And he got himself into a lot of trouble when he found these while digging around, and the boxes that they were found in were actually dating to 50 AD. So the period is right on the dates of the boxes, the wooden boxes, even though the emotional response to them has been they were fake. They were made by David Wyrick, they say. They were put in the museum. They were sold to the Johnson brothers that founded this museum, and they're on display in there. So, I geeked out going up to see them. And when I show you that I'm walking around pointing out stuff to the kids, it's in this region right here. Middle of this area for whatever reason. Think about digging all that stuff out. Digging this ditch and putting it all up here. And do it in a perfect circle all the way around. Came from.
Oh. It's good to get perspective.
I know it.
Oh, that looks like that's the mini circle, I think.
Hard to tell.
That I think's the hexagon. I don't know. Yeah, are we in the hexagon?
You know what's funny is that
That's the circle right here. Yeah.
these hills would have made a really good.
All right, so let's talk about the significance of these things. So what's cool about this little museum, worth the trip. If you live in Ohio and you haven't been there and you have any kind of interest in these things, it's worth a day trip. I consider the Natural History Museum in Columbus to be one of the great ones in the country. The Cincinnati Museum Center is one of the great ones. But they had these on display years ago. I photographed them. This is the Cincinnati tablet found just right over off Mountain Street in downtown Cincinnati. Very, very interesting. But again, it's along the lines of the Adena people. This is 500 BC, roughly. Hopewell culture kind of built on top of them. And they're all kind of thrown in the mound builder basket. So the Wilmington tablet, the Cincinnati tablet right here. This is in possession at the museum center of Cincinnati. They have taken it out of their Native American exhibit. It doesn't really fit anywhere. I famously got into quite a good old argument with the curators at the British Museum over their Crystal Skull exhibit because they sort of put it in the main room. They didn't really know what to do with it because they assume it's fake. they assume, just like these guys do, that when you find something extraordinary, it's a fake. That's why, and I'll show a picture of me. I'll put a picture up here. Here's a picture of me as I sat down and saw the stones that I've been thinking about for decades. I knew about the museum, and I wrote about it in my book. I hadn't actually been there yet. I just knew about the museum, and I purchased these wonderful replicas from them at the time. And this one is called the Decalogue Stone, and it was found at a mound 10 miles south. It's called the Stone Mound. It's 40 feet tall, and it's covered in Hebrew. And again, the assumption as it was looked at is there's a lot of mistakes on it. These are the 10 Commandments written onto this stone, the Decalogue Stone. They found this one first, and they got a lot of media criticism about it. And this one just references the Holy of the Holies on one side of it, and then it goes on and on to kind of reference the 10 Commandments on the four sides of it. And it was found again here, middle of the octagon, by David Wyrick and some other friends. And it was accused of being a forgery when it came out. So the accusation is that he turned around and made a better one. This is supposed to be Moses carved on the front with the 10 Commandments packed on this stone everywhere you can pack writing. Everywhere you could possibly put Hebrew writing, it's on here. And again, this is a replica, and I was amazed after I actually saw the stones how realistic this one is. You can buy these at the museum. I love it. I'm glad that they do that. That museum, the people who run it, have always ran it, are dedicated to hard archaeology. And they also sort of set their exhibit up to debunk the credibility of David Wyrick. And I've read everything they could possibly publish. They have a lot of good periodicals. They've held a lot of archaeological symposiums there, which they've recorded in these books. Civilizations Lost and Found. So that's why this is a particularly important museum, a haven, kind of where they've kept these, one of the most mysterious archaeological pieces in the world, the Holy Stones, considered to be a fake, just like the crystal skull at the British Museum is considered to be a fake. And when I got in an argument with that curator, of course, he said, well, nobody had the ability to carve quartz or crystals with such precision at that time when, until much later. So it couldn't have been found among the debris of the Mayans in central Mexico where that crystal skull was found. So therefore it must be a fake, because there's no archaeological evidence to show that anybody could carve anything that specifically, that precisely at that time. And then when people say that, then I say Wendover people. No one said that anybody could do textiles that are, close to modern textile weaving at 8,000 years ago in Central Florida. There's a lot more, the story certainly isn't over on what, why, when, where everybody came here. So I was very interested to see how they were going to present this information at the museum itself. I've seen a few documentaries where people have gone there and done investigations, and the museum is always accommodating. But I went there and just sort of geeked out. And as I saw the exhibit, a heavy hammer hit me, metaphorically, of course. I realized that I did not want to have to be the guy to explain some options here to why these aren't forgeries, or why they're not quite what people think they are. So the museum curators and the archaeologists that have went out and published a lot of information, symposiums about here's old questions, new science, where they basically debunk why David Wyrick, a guy who went around and surveyed at a time when it was really hard to get around, this is 1860, 61, really hard to survey these mound sites all over Ohio, because it's not like you could just drive across the state. You had to really work to get there. And David Wyrick, if you go into this, the visitor center right here at the Raised Circle earthwork, right here, and the highway runs right by this, There's a few fast food places right around here, like a McDonald's type thing and a Wendy's, and all that's right here. So the Great Circle is right off the main road. People drive by it all day long. It's kind of like Cahokia. It's right there in the middle of a lot of traffic. And we built an entire town really on top of this really important site. Why did we do that? There's a lot of theories. I've said before, I like archaeologists. I like reading I like reading their books. I like what they find as evidence and how it applies to things. I love Biblical Archaeology Review. It's one of my favorite things. I love all archaeology periodicals. I like what all archaeologists have to say. They go out and they dig in the dirt and they work real hard to get information, and I like reading what they say. But usually there's more that doesn't get considered, and academia is filled with a very liberal slant. And I find I disagree with them a lot because I read widely. One of my favorite books on these things, and this is an archaeologist, this is The Mystery of the Serpent Mound by Ross Hamilton. Wonderfully done book. Digs into the math of all this stuff extensively, and without archaeologists to go dig into all these things, there wouldn't be much to theorize on. This is about Serpent Mound, just to the south of this Newark site, in the math that's in it. Ross Hamilton makes some really good books. He knows Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock has done some famous work at the Serpent Mound. And they've contemplated these earthworks and how these Hopewell people and the Edina people, how they have so much advanced knowledge. And I think I have a theory on it, which is why you see me sitting kind of dejected in that seat at there, because I got to the museum, I sat down in front of the exhibit, I read some of the stuff they published about it, and this is what they consider to be mainstream. And I realized I have to be that person. In my book, and like I say, people are like, when's your book going to come out? I said, well, if you do traditional publishing, and you're out there talking to agents and big money publishers, it's big business, some of this publishing, and you want to and I think this is my book, The Politics of Heaven, certainly fits in that role. You take your time with it. It takes time, but the information is coming faster than you could publish a book. So a lot of people are asking me, when's the book going to come out? I want to read it. It's like I say, this book, The Politics of Heaven, offers alternative theories to some of this stuff that has not been yet considered. And the evidence, everyone says, archaeologists say, where's the evidence? The evidence is coming in fast. And I think the evidence is coming in ways that a lot of people don't want to deal with. So one of the exhibits, and as I was sitting, I put a picture up on my blog of the picture that I was looking at when I saw, and I sat there kind of dejected, like, dang it, why does it have to be me? Why do I have to be the one to go say things that are going to pop everybody's bubble? I don't really want to be that person. I have been that person most of my life, and I don't wake up in the morning wanting to be that person. I just am, because I'm an out-of-the-box person. I find what's in the box boring, and I like out-of-the-box stuff. I like out-of-the-box people. I am not exactly a regimented person. I'm a free, shoot-from-the-hip kind of person that gathers a lot of information. I have my mind on the big picture a lot, so the criticism of that kind of approach to things is that you miss the details. The devil's in the details, so you should always pay attention to the details. And I think the details can get you lost. The devil's in the details, and they can suck you down and not let you see the big picture. So what I was reading, there's a little presentation there to my right when I'm sitting in on that little chair next to the Decalogue stone, and the other relics that are in the case with it. This Decalogue stone came in a case, like a stone case, so you could pull the case off, and this was in it. And it's a picture of Moses. And again, a lot of people are saying this is kind of like when the Mormon faith came about, and a lot of European immigrants brought with them Christianity. And they were homesick, and they were trying to impose on indigenous people the ideas of Christianity and taming the heathens. A lot of early frontiersmen who were inspired to come into the Ohio River Valley, Miami Valley, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Michigan, before those were states actually. There's land giveaways to inspire people to come out and do these things and settle the land, and the Indians butchered them quite brutally. And if you've ever read the Alan Eckert books, which I love them, and they're very, they pay a lot of, I think, Alan Eckert was a writer for the old wilderness series, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, which is, if you're growing up in that time, it was a really good show. Very respectful to Native American cultures, if you want to call them Native Americans. I don't know what you call them, Native Americans. Or indigenous people. I think that's a very political statement. And of course, as I've pointed out, a lot of people who look to get funding for their archaeology digs and do archaeology work for big universities, you're not going to get a peer-reviewed paper done if you don't play by the rules. And the rules say, the in-the-box rules say, indigenous people, good. Western expansion, the creation of America, bad. So you find that, and that's why I felt dejected by this presentation. I love this museum. I think the people who put the museum together, the Johnson Humrick House Museum, I love them. I dare say it. I like the people who work there. Although I'm not picking on them. I'm not picking on them. I was going through their gift shop, looking for treasures. You know, most of the stuff I already had. I ordered these, and they sent them to me online years ago. I've had them for a long time. But that's why I knew about the museum, and I wanted to physically go there and see the specimens. And I was going through their gift shop. I found these. 3 of these. These are replicas of the Wilmington stone. I've seen pictures of it so much, I knew exactly what it was. I know, I've memorized all these lines. A lot of interpreters will say that some of these serpent-like figures on here represent Baal from the Bible. So how can you say it's Baal from the Bible, but yet not have a Christian influence or a biblical influence on the North America discoveries after Columbus or pre-Columbus? How could Canaanite gods been in the Indian culture? They might have called them different names, but anyway, interpretations of this Wilmington stone say that, because they don't really know. Nobody really understands this language. It gets attributed to the Adena, and it could be that they were just a cargo culture to a previous culture, but who were they? And archaeologists are always saying, well, how far back can you go? What evidence do you have? Well, a lot of the evidence was destroyed during farming of these regions, and right now this is a major archaeological site, and most of the town of Newark is built on top of it. This whole area has houses in it, and I'm going to go check and see how many hauntings are in this area. I bet there's a lot, because these kinds of sites tend to generate paranormal activity, a lot of it. And so I'd be curious to see what the history is, and when you compress paranormal sightings with all the home construction that's in this area. And of course, they kept this a golf course, and now the golf course is no longer active. It's just now a big site, and I guarantee you they're going to have to turn it into a park, because there's no way with all the indigenous people discussion that they're going to be able to build anything on top of this. This is one of the most sacred sites on planet Earth. And you can just walk right up to it and look at it the way I did in the videos. Astonishing archaeological site. But what evidence do you have? So let me just tell you, I memorized this. I knew what it was right away. I asked the cashier girl, very sweet person. The place is supposed to open at, I think it was noon. Supposed to open at noon. And my family, we were already there. We got there like at 2 minutes till noon. So we were standing outside. And bless her heart, it's a museum. They might get 5 guests a day at this place. And there's 5 or 6 of us standing outside at noon waiting for her to unlock the doors. And you could tell they're not used to unlocking the doors at noon. So it got to be 12:07, 12:08. And we're still standing out there. And she comes up and unlocks it, looking at us like, why are you guys out here? What are you waiting for? I said, I'm waiting to see the Holy Stones. I came a long way to see the Holy Stones. I've waited many years to get here. I want to see the Holy Stones, even though I have them. And these are every bit as good as what's in that museum exhibit. These are exact replicas. So knowing that the Johnson Humrick House Museum is into making replicas, and I wish all of them done, because I've been looking for tablets. I want to see a Cincinnati tablet replica. I haven't found anybody that's made one yet. I wanted the museum center to do it, but they took their exhibit down because I guess they don't know how to present it, because it doesn't fit to anything. It reminds people that there were mounds when we built the city of Cincinnati and Fountain Square and all that stuff. It was a ritual zone like this, a big mound, big large mound like that 40-foot mound that this was found in, and it was called the Stone Mound, and there was a skeleton in it. I bet that it was a large skeleton based on what was discovered among the Wendover people 8,000 years ago, Central Florida, and sites off the coast, off the Gulf Coast, 150 miles out into the Gulf. Lots of archaeology out there from when the sea level was much lower. When you say, where's the proof? I say the proof is among the Wendover people. Lot to consider there. Anyway, I knew this was the Wilmington tablet, and I asked the lady, same girl that opened the door for us, very sweet young lady, really liked her. She was very nice, very professional, and to her credit, she called the people who are running the museum during the day, because I said, I want this, but there's no price on it. There's a barcode, but I want this. I got to have it. And she thought it was a coaster. She thought it was a coaster. There's three of them. There were three of them laying there. And I said to her, that's a replica of the Wilmington tablet. And she's like, oh, what? What are you talking about? And she works there. So they had these on sale, so they know what the Holy Stones are. But this is the Wilmington tablet. It's world famous. They found these tablets in the mounds, and this one obviously in Wilmington. Obviously the Cincinnati tablet down in Cincinnati. And they found others around the state, in many states, Mississippi culture. A lot of it dating back to 500 BC. This is the period of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. A few hundred years afterwards, but this is the time that the Greeks are doing philosophy, and what's going on? Why are they making these things? And why are they putting them in mounds when people pass away? And my explanation for it is, when you look at the side here, and you look at those little emblems here, those are likely numbers. And likely, that's a numerical system right there. Probably, nobody's really quite sure. There are people who say these tablets were made to be tattoo templates, so you could dip it in ink and then put it on your arm, and then have somebody tattoo it on your arm, so you get the pattern. And they mean something in reverence to your tribal ownership. I think of them, again, because of those little side marks, which I've never seen before. I've only seen that view of it. But when you look at the side, and especially this looks like a numerical symbol here, based on this kind of stuff, okay, it probably means something very numerically. This is probably like having a driver's license number or a social security number for the people. And this let people know that somebody important was buried. And here's their business card. Here's their driver's license. Here's their ID. We're talking about IDs a lot in Ohio right now. If you don't have an ID, you can't vote. To be buried in some of these mounds as elite classmen, they had an ID card, and that's probably what this is. Wilmington tablet for the person that was buried in it. Anyway, this Decalogue stone was found. If you go down I-70, there's a intersection close to Newark. There's Newark, and then you go down a little bit more, and you get to Zanesville. So before you get to those exits, there's an exit where there's a couple gas stations, and one has a brontosaurus. It's for the tourist industry, because back in the day, people went to go see Zane's Trace. They went to go see the big Muskie dig out strip mining. Now you have the Wilds close by, which is where we were staying. We were at the Wilds, and I was like, we're only a few minutes away from the great Johnson Humrick House Museum. Why don't we go over there and look at it? Because I've been wanting to go there for a long time. It's just so out of the way that, why would you how do you go there? It's too far for really a day trip from Cincinnati. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere to go see, which is why they only have a few visitors per day. But I've been wanting to go there so bad, and I finally made it. Anyway, they sell these, and I bought these, and this was found in a mound at the exit. If you get off the exit, there's like 2 gas stations, and one of them has like a brontosaurus in it to appeal to tourism in that area. For Zanesville and Newark, come out and see this. They figured it would be a tourist that's an hour outside of Columbus to the east. So they figured there's going to be tourism, so they built a big brontosaurus, like you'd see out on Route 66, out west, out in Arizona and New Mexico. Big brontosaurus, and it never quite took off. I think the place was not, when we stopped by there just recently, I think it was all shut down, the gas station was. But across the street from that, down the hill along I-70, was the old 40-foot tall stone mound, one of the largest in the state of Ohio at the time. And it was a stone mound because it was a popular path. And I got to say something else about these paths, about these avenues here. It was a popular trading route. People took it. They went on down to Chillicothe and everywhere else. And whenever they passed this mound, the legend says that this is the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s. And when David dug into this mound, David Wyrick, when he dug into the stone mound, he had 5 people witnessing it with him. One of them would later accuse him of forgeries because they didn't actually see what he was doing. They think that he made this at his house or had a reverend in town make it so they could say that Christianity outdated the indigenous people, which justified destroying them. And that's the modern archaeologist's statement about why this forgery occurred. And it's complete assumption on their part. It's putting words in Wyrick's mouth, I think, in a way that puts political infusion into something that isn't that. All right, so this is why I say I don't want to be that one to have to say this. Because after I saw Disclosure Day, it was only a couple days later, I was here and revisiting sites I've always thought about. I'm rethinking a lot of things because I just wrote a book about all this stuff. And I think it's game-changing information, to say the least. And but to say it, you've got to destroy a lot of people's premise. And I saw what they said at this museum, which I was disappointed in. Anyway, this one here was found in a mound. They took all the stones off the mound. Everybody who passed by the mound would put a stone on it. And 40 feet tall, that's a pretty big stone mound. And they took all the mounds off of it to build like some kind of aqueduct for some local construction project. And then Wyrick and 4 of his friends dug into it, found a skeleton, and found this inside the cases that were at this display. So that's what they think. That's what Wyrick presented. And if you go into this visitor center right here, there's a painting on the wall on the right from David Wyrick. So he's not exactly a kook. A lot of his work was very respected, especially on his surveying. And he was very serious about this stuff, very passionate about these things. And of course, later archaeologists looking back through history who have a political statement to make say that he did it as a forgery to use justification to say, here's the 10 Commandments. They were already here in the United States before Columbus came and discovered North America, and we used that as justification to push all the Indians out, the indigenous people. Well, here's the deal. The math that's in here likely could not have come from, there's only one place on Earth that has this kind of stuff, and they're in, it's Stonehenge and the mound cultures of Great Britain and Eastern France, okay? And there's a lot of debate about the Wendover people in Florida and whether any of their DNA traces to Europeans. And of course, they've said they all come from Beringia. They hold to the model of Beringia. There's some of these archaeologists that are arguing against Wyrick and the gang that say, most likely people settled central Mexico and South America across The Pacific Ocean, there wasn't anybody up, and it's really cold up in during the Ice Age up in Siberia and across the land bridge, and likely not many people came across that way. They likely migrated across the Pacific Ocean. If you looked at how many islands were close to each other, from Australia, from Indonesia, all the way to South America, it wasn't too adventurous when the ocean was 400 feet lower, to go island to island and settle even Easter Island at the time. So a lot of things changed, and people likely migrated into North America from that way, and it's a whole topic of its own. Even the archaeologists who are criticizing David Wyrick as a forger, and one of those archaeologists, and I kind of like him, Kenneth Fetter. He's right there. This is a symposium they did with partnership with the Johnson Hummerkaus Museum, and they put together this thing. It says right there, "The Lost Civilizations of North America documentary is one in a long line of failed attempts to populate America's ancient past with the denizens of lost tribes, lost cities, and its title indicates lost civilizations." So these archaeologists down here at the bottom, this guy I'm talking about, he doesn't really think the Beringia idea is a good one because it was pretty cold and pretty rough way to get into the New World, but whatever, we're still figuring things out. Those archaeologists right there put together this symposium, which was sponsored by these guys, and they do a lot of those kinds of things over the years. This was back in the before 2010, I think, this one. And this was a symposium. These are the sponsors of the symposium. They have archaeologists come out and do talks and essentially talk about why this Decalogue stone was a forgery. But I wanted to see it for myself. Anyway, I knew that this museum had a tongue in the cheek for historical reference that you could trust, and they're really in it for the right reasons. Great stuff, great exhibits, good little museum. And again, they have these things, world famous, and it diminishes it. It's like the Crystal Skull at the British Museum, which is deemed a fake by the museum itself. And when I said, "Why do you think it's a fake?" Well, we haven't discovered anybody that had technology to cut it like that, so we assume it's a fake. Because even though we found it in areas where it would date into the 100 BCs, it would date to the first temple period, Jerusalem. In some cases, some of these relics do in central Mexico. Anything that's its first or second temple period, you got to have some relevance for. And now I'm there. I'm going through this, and it looked like a belt buckle to me or a coaster. I asked the lady, "Hey, I want to buy this. How can I get it?" Because I knew right away, same dimensions as the Wilmington tablet was. This was found in the mound, just like this. The actual one you can go see at the Museum of Natural History in Columbus. Big museum, looks like a big pyramid kind of thing, off the campus of Ohio State, right off the highway. Big parking lot, can't miss it. It's right on your left if you're traveling north. They have this on display in that museum. So here I'm at this museum, the Johnson Hummerkaus Museum. I see 3 of these, and I want one. I knew these guys had a tendency to make replicas because they're these things, and they're very good and well done, as you can see when you see the actual exhibit. So I saw these. I'm like, hey, they had this in mind, but I didn't see it on their website anywhere. It's not in their inventory. And the lady looked it up using the barcode. It wasn't even in their system. She had no idea what it was. So she said to the person running the museum that day, "Hey, somebody wants to buy one of these coasters up here, and I don't have any pricing for it." So she came up. She had no idea what these were. And I said, "That's not a coaster. That's the Wilmington tablet. It's a replica of the Wilmington tablet." "What? A Wilmington? What? Wilmington's a city like way south of here." So the Wilmington tablet, the famous thing found in the... Nah, never mind. How much is it? How much? Well, give me $5 for it. $5? You bet. Oh, gladly. I should have bought all of them. So great story. I'll talk about the Wilmington tablet in great detail in another episode. But I went up to the exhibit and I sat down and I was very dejected when I read what they said. There's a picture. They were on the display. They had like a little swiping display that you can kind of read why they think that these stones are frauds. And one of them said, why would someone I have a picture of it here that I'm going to put on my blog. I'll put it up on here too so people can see it. Why would someone forge the holy stones? It says one bullet point says, holy stones were forged as an attempt to provide scientific support for monogenesis. Next bullet point down, if monogenesis was proven to be true, then support for slavery would decline. It might even be abolished without the need for a bloody civil war. Next bullet point down, the discovery of the Decalogue stone was carefully timed to coincide with Abraham Lincoln's controversial election. It was meant to sway the minds and votes of those on the fence. Now, that bothers me tremendously because all of it is theory. All of it has a political bent to it, university liberalism, and the archaeologists who said, you know what? I know what these are. We've dug them. We've analyzed them. This guy, David Wyrick, was a Mason, which this is kind of Masonic in its symbolism. And he had an obsession with Hebrew. He probably had a local rabbi write them out for him, and they made mistakes. It's done with kind of modern, not ancient Hebrew, but modern Hebrew dialect taken out of Bibles that were circulating at the time. Same mistakes in the way those Bibles were written were actually done when they did these 10 Commandments on here. All the 10 Commandments are on this. So this is meant to show that the 10 Commandments were already in North America at the time, and that politically, a lot of the people who were against David Wyrick were wanting pro-slavery during the time. This is 1961. David Wyrick died of a painkiller. He had it was an alcohol kind of thing. He died of an overdose on that painkiller because he was sick. A lot of people think he died from depression because his reputation as a person of good reputation was destroyed by these stones. When he found this one, everyone was very skeptical about him. And then when he found this one months later at that stone mound off I-70, it's no longer there. You can't find it. It's on a private property. You can't really get to it. It's very similar to the Middletown Mound that I always talk about. It needs to be excavated. Pretty sure they're going to be very, very large skeletons of people in those. If you dug into the Middletown Mound, just look it up. The property, it's government property. Dig it up, see what you see there. And if you find some bones, then repatriate them to some tribe that probably doesn't really... A lot of these ancient people predate the DNA samplings, which is we found with the Wendover people 8,000 years ago in Central Florida. Their DNA shows they came from the Beringia area, but that doesn't really, they don't tie to any known North American tribe. So what's that tell you? That's a problem. So it tells you there were people here at a time. Now, people's desire to have a biblical reference, especially when they were homesick, and they're trying to settle a hostile area where violence from Indians was a common occurrence, they cleaved their Bibles. And they found a lot of, I mean, the Bible, no matter what you think about it, even though secular scientists want very much to get rid of biblical references because secular institutional attributes are trying to remove everything God-related in society. So they're trying to come up with a theory when obviously the theory is actually part of the story. So you can't say, where's the evidence when you're destroying the evidence? Just like you can't say, what's this all about if you build an entire new city on top of it? They did the same thing in Miamisburg. Miamisburg is just one mound left. Avebury has a town built right through the middle of it. It's for years and years, Stonehenge had a highway that went right by it, like 20 or 30 feet. So preservation of these ancient sites, a lot of them have been destroyed as modern progress has occurred. And I'm not against modern progress by any means. But when you say what they said on this sign, why would someone forge the Holy Stones? You open the door to, okay, you just injected your personal belief system and your personal politics. The Democrats at the time were all pro-slavery. They all hated David Wyrick. He was a very respected person for a while, even so that his painting of this mountain complex is hanging in the visitor center right there. And so knowing that he was Mr. Forgery by established science, and that he found these and then put them out there and said, look what I found in the mounds, and they didn't find anything else. Well, most of the sites were damaged, and there's probably dozens of these kinds of things all over the place that were damaged by farming, taken by construction workers. They're probably in private collections. Nobody wanted to scrutiny to go through what David Wyrick went through, so they just kept it to themselves. That's why you don't find more stuff. That's where the evidence is. That's just like something like this. They send their own museum, and they have one of the most amazing replicas on planet Earth of something, and they work there every day, and they didn't even know what it was. It's not their fault, but it's kind of the way people are. And just like with these, the belief system is it had to be a forgery because the indigenous people didn't make it. And then the assumption is the indigenous people, as we came, already had this technology. They already understood all this advanced mathematics, even though the only places in the world that did math like this were like Egypt, the Near East, and Europe and Great Britain. Avebury site. Very similar math. It's Stonehenge, as what you see here in the Mound Builders. So if you're going to say, where's the evidence? You have to say, well, somehow those people ended up over here. Well, how'd they do that? Did they get in a canoe and come over here? Because nobody had big ships. Well, Noah's Ark had a big ship, and it stayed afloat for 40 days and 40 nights. And if you think about people traveling to North America at a time when the sea level was much lower during the Ice Age, for instance, then it's not so far to get from the British Isles over to Iceland, Iceland to Greenland, Greenland to Canada. A lot of people don't even know that the Great Lakes of Ohio and Indiana and Michigan, Pennsylvania, they weren't even there pre-Ice Age. In fact, there's like a Stonehenge at the bottom of about 30 feet of water off Grand Rapids, Michigan. How'd that get there? Who built that? Because that indicates intelligent design, Göbekli Tepe type period, because that predates the Great Lakes being made by melting glacial water, and the pressure of the glacier is actually pushing the Earth's crust down from their weight. There's a lot of mystery there, a lot that still has to be uncovered. And I'm all for what the archaeologists say, hey, let's go get the evidence. Okay, go get the evidence. But when the evidence is right in front of your face, don't ignore it. So my proposal, and this is why I don't want to be the one to say it, but they're going to say something, I think, this stupid. Hey, David Wyrick was a political character, and he wanted to, because no one cared about the Indians at that time. I mean, they saw the mounds, they built their town on top of it. David Wyrick and the Mormons, and they were all wanting to bring elements of Christian faith into the New World. They were homesick. Okay, I get it. The Bible is the one of the best historical documents we have, validated by the Dead Sea Scrolls of the period. Why would you not think? Why would you just say it's a regional history book? Why wouldn't you assume that it had not galactic meaning? I think it had galactic meaning. I think the source material is galactic in nature. So the question that comes out of Disclosure Day is God for everywhere, or just on planet Earth, or just in the Near East? Just of the Jewish people, the people of Judea, and then those who call themselves Christian because they followed in the ways of Jesus Christ. Definitely a student of the Essenes who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. you can't blame people for having the only bit of history, and if archaeologists are trying to displace the historic narrative of the Bible and say, hey, forget about that, let's embrace all this stuff, we're going to make up the new Bibles, our science will make up all the new text. So why are you guys grabbing your Bibles and your guns and pushing these indigenous people away when we want to affiliate with them? Well, because they said it right here in this display at the museum. And they said there's no proof of anything they just said there. The Holy Stones were forged. That's a fact. They're saying that as a fact. They're saying these were forged. Archaeologists, institutional archaeologists said so. They were forged because David Weyrich wanted to prove that everybody descended from Adam. That's what they mean by monogenesis. Only one group of people came from Adam, not polygenesis. It's when you talk about the troubles of polytheism, when you have all these multiple gods, and you have a culture that says only honor one God and don't use his name in vain. You're talking about a jealous God that's trying to steer the world, trying to steer society. So now you have this influence in North America. How did it get in North America? Did it come here in pre-Columbian ways? And did it end up in these cultures, buried in these mound sites? Is that so hard to believe? And according to archaeologists, they said their whole theory is David Weyrich was a con man who wanted to show, because he was religious and a Mason, he wanted to show that God was present in North America before the indigenous people, so we could justify Indian removal. And that's what pretty much all the archaeologists are saying out there, all the institutional guys, which I find extremely disappointing. And it actually means I have to say what I got to say about the whole thing. I've studied these guys. I've read everybody's opinions. I've read the Graham Hancocks. I've read the great Ross Hamiltons. Wonderful stuff in here. The Gregory Littles. There's a lot of people who've done Hugh Newmans. There's a lot of people who have done great work out there out of sheer passion to tell the story of what they think all this is. And you know what I think it is? I think if you go to Disclosure Day, and this is I'm surprised in the reviews of the movie after they come out, nobody's getting it. Even people who do this kind of analysis for a living. And I guess I'm offering myself to be one of those people now. I haven't been. I've kept this stuff kind of to myself, my opinions to myself, and I just kind of enjoy doing the Weekend Warrior thing and going to these places and trying to find these little ancient relics. And I geek out on this, going to mound sites and trying to figure out who did what and why and what's the story of them all. Look at all that. It's so beautiful. You know, if that's a forgery, it's a nice forgery. But I would say that the important thing to say isn't that David Weyrich was a young Republican following in the ways of Abraham Lincoln. He was an abolitionist trying to get rid of slavery and using a Christian premise to get rid of slavery. Seems pretty noble to me. I can't say that's a bad thing. And people didn't like him, and they hated him, and they threw him out of all the social circles, and he found he couldn't deal with it, so he really got addicted to his medication. This kind of an alcohol, forget the name of it, but it was definitely one that was for pain. He had a lot of pain, and he took medication for his pain. So you know what I say, and I'm not the first one to say, I think Graham Hancock has been most revolutionary on this, is that through psychedelics, spiritual entities can communicate with the weak-minded. And I don't think Graham Hancock says that. Graham Hancock says, hey, take psychedelics so you can communicate with these gods. Because when I've taken it, I've seen serpents, same kind of serpents you see in the Garden of Eden. And they're always telling you stuff. Shaman go and they shapeshift all the time. There's actually a picture in this museum of a really good shaman belt built out of deer teeth. I'll put it up too. And it's meant to capture the essence of the spirit of the deer. And if you've seen Disclosure Day, you know the aliens show up in lots of animals. Animals are not very sophisticated characters, so They're not exactly demanding sovereignty over their terrestrial bodies, so they're easy to control. I am surprised that more people aren't talking about the MK Ultra stuff in Disclosure Day. They get hung up on the aliens and the alien at the end, and whether it looks fake or not. People, what they gravitate to is kind of weird, I think. The big story is they're doing mind control, and they're making people do things. They're looking through their eyes. They're taking over their bodies. They're taking over the sovereignty of their bodies and manipulating them completely, which I think is, and I'm not at all shocked by it. I've said that's been going on for years. That's a common occurrence, and yes, the three-letter agencies utilize that stuff. That technology was developed in the 60s. And did they learn it from the aliens? Probably. So if you take the premise and you see all the UAP reviews that are coming out, all the disclosure elements, what does that do for our society? I think the most obvious thing, and the missing link in all this, the archaeologists are saying, well, I think I understand David Wyrick's political motives for making a forgery, and it's going to get my peer-reviewed letters and publications published, because the New York Times will review my little book because I'm fitting a profile that they agree with. That's Democrat progressivism, support of indigenous people. They had superior technology. Terrible us. We came and destroyed them. And my statement would be, these guys had medicine men, just like David Wyrick was probably drunk out of his mind by 1863 when he died. 1864. He died a year before Abraham Lincoln was shot. Civil War was still going on. If he was an abolitionist, he was run out of every social circle. Nobody wanted to be around him because they thought he was Mr. Forgery. He was ran out of town, literally, and it broke his heart. And he was getting drunk on that painkiller all the time. And yes, his painkiller could create psychedelic imagery. Anybody that participates in psychedelic imagery, whether you go to the Three Rivers site, which I talk about extensively in my book, and some of these archaeologists use that as their base point, I say that that's the foundation of the Aztec Empire. There are Three Rivers. And why did they join together? Because it's a dangerous world out there. There's strength in numbers, and they joined and formulated an empire that would sacrifice humans and other lives to these scary gods that they would see in these vision quests, and shaman were always reporting to, because they use psychedelics. And what happens under psychedelics, and this is what I warn everybody about, I actually talk about it extensively in my book. I dedicated a whole chapter to how celebrity is created and how drunkenness makes you a third party in your own body. And all kinds of crazy characters, these aliens, as we know them, non-human intelligences, whether it's in the form of modern AI or another biological entity that's non-human, that wants to live its best life through you. It seeks out weak people, compromised people, guilty people, and people who are drunk all the time, people who are stoned, people who are... That's why drugs are dangerous, boys and girls, because you lose your sovereignty. You lose your ability to say no. And I pointed out in the movie, and everyone says that the Spielberg movie is an anti-Christian movie, and I'm sure Spielberg knows how Hollywood works. He's trying to get all the secular people to applaud his movie by saying he's challenging the Christian premise. Well, you know what? I think he threw a big bone to him, because it's very respectful of Christian premise, because one of the main characters, was using her belief in the cross, in Christ, to overcome mind control. It's a huge part of the movie. And she did it so much that it dug into her hands, and she was bleeding all over the place. The power of faith can overcome evil trying to take over your body. Not necessarily demonic possession, but third-party possession, whether it's a government entity, a three-letter agency, some aerospace company that's working in conjunction with non-human entities from other planets. Possible. Anything's possible. But what do I say? I think that the Ten Commandments could have come into David Wyrick, and he was told what to do and why to do it, to create political instability within the United States, cause a civil war, cause trouble. And how, for what means? The same means that these guys received advanced mathematics. They had medicine men that were talking to spiritual entities. Spiritual entities were, and there's UFOs and ayahuasca experiences on almost every occasion that people report them. And I talk about that a lot too. And I think that's how, it's not so much that you had people coming over from other countries, the Phoenicians, the lost tribe of Israel, the people's desire to have a biblical narrative and to put it on stones and create a forgery to create a narrative to stop slavery. Pretty noble cause, in my opinion. That's all part of the archaeology record and part of the story of you find an ancient culture here, and if David Wyrick wanted to make a political element out of it, he certainly did or could have. These guys are looking in hindsight and saying, "Hey, I want my peer-reviewed paper to get a good grade, so I'm going to tell them what they want to hear." So I'm going to talk about David Wyrick as a kook and a guy who forged these great stones. But like any great museum, the Johnson Hummerhouse Museum puts these on display, offers them to buy. You can hold them in your hand. You can feel the weight of them. You can try to figure out, are they forgeries or part of a political narrative or something that nobody's really touched on yet? And I think I have to be the one to say it's what no one's touched on yet. And that's that non-human entities and what these guys were considering to be gods, and they're worshiping the stars and all these lunar alignments. One thing I make in my book, The Politics of Heaven, one point I make that I've never heard, even though they point out the great math in them, I think that non-human visitors who are coming and going from planet Earth need markers. That's why I want to check the UFO sightings in this area. They need markers on the ground that are visible from the sky, like the Nazca lines. This is huge. Again, a whole 18-round golf course is within this complex. It's an amazing sight, and obvious from the air, and then all these alignments. What's the purpose of them? I think it's a clock. I think it's a clock to know when, because of time dilation. When you travel into space and you come back, even if you think you've only been gone for 1 or 2 minutes, if you can move as fast as some of these UAPs that are being released from the Trump administration are said to go, and they have bases underwater, and we know of at least 4 species, probably more than that, likely more than that. There's a lot of talk out there, and that's the greatness of a movie like the Disclosure Day movie. Like these stones, the holy stones that are at that museum, they put them on display, and you come, think what you want. They throw a bone to the archaeologists who say stupid things like this political statement. They say they were forged because Wyrick, David Wyrick, wanted to make a political statement. Well, a political statement might have been infused because he was drunk on his painkillers all the time, and he had the same kind of characters that came into people who take ayahuasca and other psychedelics, mushrooms, marijuana. Definitely something that was done among Canaanite worship, even worship of Yahweh in the high places in the Near East. Likely there was marijuana consumption going on at the Temple of Solomon. And that's why they saw all kinds of crazy stuff going on, because their mind was untethered from reality in what they call a stone condition. They call it a spiritual experience. But I call it drug use that gives third parties access to your mind and lets them take it over. I would say that's the transmission, and Graham Hancock thinks drugs are great. I don't. I disagree with him very much on drug use and legalization of drug use. I caution against drug use because I don't think it's a good idea that you lose consciousness under drunkenness, being stoned with marijuana, crack, ayahuasca, whatever the method. I don't think any of it's good, because once you lose your grounding to your physical body, your soul is no longer tethered. You're no longer driving the car, but the backseat driver or the passenger is now driving in your place. And when you get drunk or you take these psychedelics, you lose that. And I think these medicine men at these cultures were communicating with the same kind of spiritual entities, non-human intelligence that were talking to the Canaanites, that were talking to the early Jewish people of Judea, the early Israelites. And yes, if Moses was giving the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai under conditions that sound an awful lot like a UFO encounter to me, I'm not one who thinks Zechariah Sitchin was crazy, Graham Hancock. I know you do. And I love Graham Hancock's work about most things. Ross Hamilton, I like their affiliation. They tag team a lot of good stuff. I think Ross Hamilton probably thinks like Graham Hancock. A lot of these guys they're not really big on Christian viewpoints like Timothy Alberino is. Got a lot of factions that developed, and David Wyrick back in the day was one of those factions. And they're saying you can't credit anything with these stones because he had a political motivation that was trying to get slavery abolished and justify Western expansion by destroying the indigenous people in there. There's no proof that these advanced mathematics were already in North America, but that they came here through some either terrestrial intelligence or that the same non-terrestrial intelligence was talking to multiple medicine men in multiple cultures all over the world at the same time. And that all these things came up at a time when that non-terrestrial intelligence was in town, which is why you see everything happening between 100 BC and 50 AD, including these kinds of things. Like I said, the box that these were found in dated to 50 AD. So the wood was there, very ancient. That's the date of what they think the mounds themselves were and these complexes themselves. But that these relics were put inside them to try and tag them along and make them. But the accusation of forgeries is complete speculation based on political assumptions of the Civil War period. And that David Wyrick was an anti-slavery abolitionist aligned with Abraham Lincoln, a Republican. And modern archaeologists, because of all that, say don't look there. Let's not study why David Wyrick wanted to make something like this. And even if it was a forgery, why would you go to that much trouble? Even throw his reputation on the line. For what reason? Because something came into his head and told him to do it? Because he was like the Richard Dreyfuss character from Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Well, that's crazy to think that. Or is it? Based on what we know now from UAP releases, from official government records coming out of the Trump administration. Well, the Trump administration, we can't think that. We talk about a forgery when CNN's out there trying to put algae into the reflecting pool to make Trump look bad because he tried to brighten it up and make it look better. They had some Antifa people come along and desecrate it. That's a leftist thing. That's not a David Wyrick trying to put Decalogue stones and mounds and then say, here's a Christian premise to abolish slavery because it's immoral. I think the left should be celebrating that if they're really against slavery. But they wanted to pick and choose, and they wanted to use the indigenous people to say America should have been formed. So any good things that might have come out of that period, including these holy stones, should be thrown aside as forgeries, and that's how they displayed them in the museum. And just to let you know how deep people's knowledge runs, that's the Wilmington tablet. And it was right there in that museum, and those poor people working there, no one came along and told them that. So even when things are right in front of your face, a lot of people don't see it and know about it. And I only know about it because I'm obsessed with these kinds of things. And they thought it was a coaster. And I looked at it and I said, it's like real. It's clay. I said, no, this is the Wilmington tablet. This is a replica. Your fine people who own the Johnson Humrick House Museum went to the trouble to make a copy of the Wilmington tablet as they did these great stones so people could have in their private collection and talk about them. And I think they're the most magnificent things to talk about that's out there in the archaeology world. But my statement would be, consider that the origin for all of this stuff was from non-human intelligence, communicating through shaman over vast distances. They did not have to physically be present. Just like I could call somebody up on a phone on the other side of the world and talk to somebody in Japan in real time. If you can call somebody's consciousness up, you can put thoughts in their head. If they're sitting at a sushi bar, drunk out of their mind, you can put whatever thought you want in their head. They're going to probably go do it. Just like they did in Disclosure Day. CIA's been doing it for years. It's called MK Ultra. And there's a lot of talk about that's how Charlie Manson did what he did. And it's part of the occult practices that came out of the Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard experiments with Aleister Crowley in Pasadena. It migrated in the Hollywood community. That's why there's so much evil worship. I don't call it devil worship. I call it sadistic, occult-driven practices that you find very prevalent in the music industry. And what does music do? Music gets you to sing their song. Even if you don't understand the lyrics, people sing along all the time. They surrender just like when they get drunk. What's worse? People get drunk and sing along to some of these occult-driven songs. And you don't even know what you're saying. And what you're saying has roots in, I would say, non-terrestrial intelligence. And that's horribly controversial to say. And just like David Wyrick, people would say, oh man, I can't go out. I'm a person of great reputation. That's going to ruin my reputation just by saying it, which is why he probably drunk himself to death by 1864, 3 years after he came out and said, hey, world, look what I found in that stone mound before I-70 was built. Well, look what I found. I found this right there in the middle of that octagon. Right there, I found it in a area that was dated to 50 AD, just 20 some years after Christ was killed. In modern archaeology, so where's the proof? Where's the boats? How do we know anybody? How could you say the lost tribes of Israel came here? No, the same gods that everybody was sacrificing to in the Near East, all over the Mediterranean, the gods and goddesses of Greek society, of the Romans, all over India, all the way over into the Himalayan cultures, all the way over into Asia, all across southern Polynesia, north, definitely New Guinea, certainly Australia, definitely Indonesia. They were talking to what they thought were real gods, and they were making sacrifices to them abundantly. Who were they talking to? Under drunken conditions, they were getting non-terrestrial information. Well, how do you know that based on what we know from these UAP sightings that's not been your non-terrestrial intelligence dropping bombs into human civilizations for many thousands, probably millions of years? And you didn't have to get in a boat and cross the Atlantic Ocean to get in North America. You just had someone broadcasting, hey, why don't you put the Ten Commandments on a stone and put it into a mound and start some controversy? This is Yahweh here. Yahweh, I just talked to Moses a few minutes ago at the burning bush. Now I'm talking to you out here in this crazy land. I'm giving your medicine men the same message. And why wouldn't they chip the Ten Commandments on not the Ark of the Covenant and put them on some stones into the Ark of the Covenant, but put them on some stone and then bury it into the stone mound with an ancient giant of the period? I think that makes as much sense as what they put out there at that museum exhibit, which I find wholly, it's not just the holy stones. I find it wholly irresponsible for them to say the holy stones, they say it as a fact. The holy stones were forged as an attempt to provide scientific support for monogenesis. So they looked at the life and times of David Wyrick, and they said that about him. Well, he was against abortion, and he was a Christian Bible thumper, and he was advocating for everybody came out of Adam, so naturally that's how these ended up in North America. All these indigenous people would have had to come from Adam. Somehow, the archaeologists want to say, well, how'd they get here? They didn't have boats. Where's the proof that happened? Windover, thousands of years before these guys did this. Windover was burying people in bogs because they knew they needed to preserve bodies. They actually preserved brain tissue, and they were making very delicate clothing. How'd they learn to do all that? And they actually had rituals that involved the cardinal directions at a very ancient time. And then if you really want to know the answer, go dig up more Windovers. Instead, they buried it back. They buried it over and gave the bones back to the indigenous people, to the tribes known at the time, even though there's no genetic connection. How stupid is that? And yet they're going to come out and say this about poor David Wyrick. He might have forged them. I don't think he did, but he might have forged them. But how do you know that under drunkenness, because he was on those painkillers, that he wasn't getting some message from some crazy god, some non-terrestrial entity trying to start trouble on planet Earth politically, the same way that Satan whispered to Yahweh and said, hey, what about Job? Would Job be so loyal to you if you took away all his good stuff? He's only loyal to you because you gave him good stuff. So strip him of everything and see if he still stays loyal to you, which Job got very upset, obviously. And it was a test. How do you know that Satan wasn't a non-terrestrial intelligence in the politics of heaven? Which is my argument. That's the point of my book. That if you want to get to my thesis, which, the book is worth reading and publishing to get to it, and I don't think I'm breaking any rules here by saying that's the point of the book, is to say, yeah, God's God, and God is in heaven, and Enoch is there at his right hand, and he earned the right to be there. Predates Noah and all kinds of stuff, Adam and Eve, and it makes the Tower of Babel make a lot more sense if you're looking at non-terrestrial intelligence is getting jealous that mankind was cooperating too much to get to heaven, to get to their realm. They were threatened by it, and they wanted to stop it. Oh, it was Yahweh. Yahweh was mad, didn't want. It doesn't make much sense. And then who's they? And they're going to be like we. And Eve didn't eat an apple; she ate a fruit. And why was that such a threat to get knowledge of good and evil? Maybe because the politics of heaven needs conflict on planet Earth in order to succeed, and they try to undo God's creation by getting the human race to destroy itself in all kinds of ways. And that's exactly what happened to poor David Wyrick. Some non-terrestrial intelligence whispered in his ear and said, "Hey, why don't you put the 10 Commandments on some stones and put them in a mound there and really stir it up during a Civil War period? We're whispering to you while you're drunk." And the same thing going on with these guys. Hey, we're going to give you some mathematics. So you go do a lot of work for us, build a bunch of structures so that we know when we visit you, when we come to that part of the world, we know what time it is. So you have all these alignments. These circles are perfectly aligned to the moon structures over an 18-year cycle. How would they know that? They were probably told that through some medicine men, they were probably eating some psychedelic mushrooms, likely. And they were given the coordinates, the mathematics. Again, I will show a picture of, at this museum. I've been to a lot of museums. And the Johnson Humrick House Museum, it's not just the Holy Stones they have on display. They have a lot of good stuff. And they had a very nice belt. They have a very good Native American exhibit. And they had a wonderful belt of teeth from a shaman that was made out of reindeer or deer teeth, the little ones on their front teeth. And they put thousands of them into this belt and made a belt out of it so the essence of all the dead animals would be in the belt. Why do you think they did that? What do you think they were communicating with? And why were they trying to communicate with animals? I would say, based on what Steven Spielberg knows from all the letters and emails that's been sent to him, he put it all on the table in this movie, Disclosure Day. I came out of there thinking, you know what, honey, my wife, hey, you know what? I just finished a book on this whole thing, the whole politics of heaven. Why would evil entities want to undo God's creations, Yahweh, and create trouble, create these kinds of earth artifacts, and get David Wyrick to do some controversy? He ended up killing him. He ended up killing himself. They don't call it suicide, but it's death by drink at least. And he was so respected that his great drawings and surveys of these mound sites at that time, 1860 through 1864, were so respected that they have his painting. I was looking on here to see if his name was attached to it, because it looks a lot like this. But they had a picture of his painting on the wall to your right as soon as you come into the visitor center. And I asked about it. I said, wasn't that the crazy guy that did the Holy Stones? Yeah, but that was like 3 years prior. This was actually published a couple years after his death. Yeah, he painted it. It was slow back then to get things published in the 1800s, and the Civil War was disrupting a lot of things. And yeah, he was so respected they thought enough to put his paintings up of the earthworks, but they refuted his statements on the Decalogue stone, the Newark Holy Stones. So the most significant relics on planet Earth, maybe not because of what they physically represent, but because what they came from and what information was given to the recipient and how society reacted to it. I think that's the significance of them. And thank God the Johnson Humbrig House Museum put them on display. I treasure every moment that I was there with my family. You can see it. My daughter knows when I get that look and I get that walk and I start getting into that mode. She knows what it means. So she knew to turn her camera on. I didn't tell her to. She followed me up there because that's the way I introduce my grandchildren to things that are extremely significant. And I consider these holy stones to be some of those significant archaeological finds on planet Earth. I've said that about the Wendover site, and I still say that because Wendover existed 8,000 years ago, and they had a very advanced culture that obviously was trading. They were not isolated. They do not have genetic coding that matches any of the known indigenous tribes. So how can you have a NAGPRA, Native Americans Repatriation Act, where every bone you find in every mound, you throw it and associate it with this generation of people who happen to be here? Well, because archaeologists want to put forth, they want to debunk any thoughts that say that indigenous people didn't inhabit the land, because it's a political movement they have to say America should never have been created. That's their point. And that's the real root of the forgery discussion. Not because they care about people's reverence for biblical understanding, even though it's from the Bible's from the Near East. It's our most vibrant, popular, historical document anywhere in the world that has a continuity of about 1,500 years in it told. And again, on the other side, I could go down to the Creation Museum, which I've said I love. I love Kim Ham down there. I love the Creation people, the Ark Museum people. I love them. But they think that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. So how could they ever be introduced to the people of Wendover? Now, why do all these people believe all these different things? I would say that through drunkenness and use of psychedelics and mind-altering chemicals, you have a lot of Satans out there that whisper in the ears of Yahweh, hey, get these people, like the Tower of Babel, get them fighting against each other. Get people fighting against David Wyrick because he's trying to end slavery. We want slavery. We want people enslaved. We've been manipulating these Native Americans for thousands of years, and let's use them as a way to get everybody fighting against each other, and to put forth an evil political movement, and then to encourage people to believe that the Earth couldn't possibly be older than the people of Wendover. So you don't have the Christian right rallying to say, hey, Wendover proves monogenesis, because the factions are fighting against each other, just like Rhino Republicans and Tea Party Republicans and MAGA Republicans are now. Get everybody fighting against each other and they can't unify. And then what fills the void? Evil. And I think these archaeologists, so they can get their papers published, are perfectly willing to adhere to it and lie about a good man in David Wyrick. I think David Wyrick was probably a pretty good dude. I'd probably like him. He did a lot of good work up to his death, and he found the Holy Stones, and people were with him. And it was very unpopular to say those things, just like it's unpopular for me to say what I'm saying. Non-terrestrial intelligence were probably guiding everybody's hands behind the scenes on all this. Probably guiding their hands and probably guiding the hands that went against David Wyrick. Might even encourage David Wyrick to make forgeries. It might have been encouraging all these archaeologists on a drunken night out the tavern to take his dead self and get a paper published trashing his name because it satisfies some progressive institutionalism of modern archaeology. I will say, when people say, "What's your book about?" The Politics of Heaven, I say I got the idea to write that book from two sources. One is The Sign of the Seal from Graham Hancock, one of my favorite books ever. And the other is The Golden Bough by Fraser. And it's really the book that started anthropology as a science. Before there was ever anthropology, which archaeology is a derivative of, anthropology is the umbrella created by the great work Fraser did in The Golden Bough. It's a collection of stories all over the world, how they sacrifice, how they ritual practices, religions, very interesting. And it's put together in a way you never get a publisher to publish it like that today. But I was inspired to take a bunch of my observations and known stories like Fraser did, collect them from all over the place, bring them into a central story that can then create what I would say a new science. And anthropology was created because of Fraser's Golden Bough. And when I say, what's the point of The Politics of Heaven, my book, I would say my aim in it is to take the sciences that are known, that we know a lot about, and connect that known understanding to the influence of non-terrestrial intelligence that's working against the premise of God. Not a small thing, but I would say that's my point in writing the book. And I've just spoken a lot about it because there's a lot to talk about. If you get me talking about this topic, I can go on I could probably do 40 hours straight on just this topic. There's just so much to go into. I've just tipped the surface here, and that's just because I just came from this site and I love it, and I just came from the museum and I love these. I love the thought they provoke, and I don't think they're forgeries as much as they're evidence of manipulation by non-terrestrial intelligence on the human race for one way or another. And that is the root of a lot of evil in the world. And they had a Wilmington tablet. A brilliant Wilmington tablet. Look at all that great stuff written on there. Never seen these sides before. Only seen that in pictures. And a lot of people attributing their thoughts to it. And little does anybody know, every time I take people downtown, which is, about once a month, I take people downtown to Cincinnati to go to one of the fancy restaurants down there for dinner. And I always tell the story. Over there on Mound Street, over by the UPS facility, there was a mound, and it got leveled. There's a lot of mounds all through downtown. Mounds were built all over. I spent a whole chapter talking about all the ancient artifacts that were in Cincinnati before Cincinnati was there. I talk about why the Taft Theater is so haunted, because these sites are often had medicine men worshiping astrological alignments, probably communicating through psychedelics with non-terrestrial entities. And I will say that my thoughts on quantum physics and paranormal occurrences, ghosts, are that they are remnants of non-terrestrial existences that are overlapping our current time. And they may be able to interact with you in that time and space, somewhat so, or you may be witnessing them interacting with your dimensional plane of reality. Either way, areas that had this kind of stuff often have a lot of hauntings, because they had medicine men like the deer tooth guy that I was talking about, communicating with the dead spirits quantumly, whatever time they existed in the realm of death. And what they're in is a quantum realm of dimensional reality where non-terrestrial entities like to hang out and rule mankind from the shadows by whispering in the ears of people who either go after people like David Wyrick, or people who like David Wyrick that say, I really want to end slavery. Let me forge these stones and bury them in these surveyed mounds so we can disparage these people and get people to think about the Bible and how nobody should be enslaved because I'm an abolitionist. Where'd the idea come from? The fact that this stone exists tells you a lot about the people of the time. And I think it's a remarkable discussion. And I talk about these stones and even much more I've talked about here in my book. That's why I go on and on about it, because I know a lot about it. But I just came from that museum. I just came from this site, and it was wonderful. And I sat down at that exhibit after thinking about it for like two decades. And I finally got there, because I go all around it, but I've never been there, because it's like an hour and a half northeast of an Amish country of Columbus. Not easy to get to on a casual trip. You know, I'm always running around somewhere. Columbus isn't that rare for me. But that region, you know, that no man's land between Youngstown and Zanesville. There's not much out there. They did have Bigfoot sightings out there recently. But I say that I just came from there, and I just saw these in real life, the actual stones. And I now have this, and I'm on. It's the best heaven I get. I call it high heaven. It's the best kind of stuff I enjoy most in life. And when I saw this, nobody understood why I was so excited about it. After we went, my grandkids made fun of me. I was so tickled with it. I was talking to it the whole time. We went to a nice little tavern right down the road from the museum. Very nice place. Very cool period, kind of old-timey place. And I had really good fish and chips there. And my grandkids thought it was funny because I said I was feeding this tablet pieces of fish. So I said, it's got to eat. I love it so much. The only thing I love more is your grandma. And if I wasn't already married to her, I'd marry it because I love it so much. And I fed it little pieces of fish because I was so happy and proud of it. It's such a wonderful relic. It's one of the most rare things on earth. The Wilmington Tablet is a story of its own that is magnificent, and it really kind of shows to the kind of people that were in the Ohio Valley at the same time that the Second Temple period was emerging and the Essenes were writing the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I don't, it's not like the Phoenicians were, the accusation is Phoenicians were trading for copper in the Great Lakes at that time, and they were interacting with native people that were here. That's all, maybe that's the case. I think, based on UAP evidence, that because of the use of shamans at sites like this, and because they lost their consciousness in these kinds of things, and they were talking to non-terrestrial entities as shaman, that stationary characters entering our plane of reality, entering people, possessing them, working through them, as they show in the movie Disclosure Day. CIA figured out MKUltra a long time ago. Charlie Manson was likely a recipient. So were the assassins that went after Trump recently. So was the killer in Vegas. Likely. Where's the proof? Well, when you destroy the proof, you're not going to have any proof. And these three letter agencies under Biden and Obama were certainly prone to abuse that technology. And that technology is very real. And where's the proof? I think Charlie Manson, it died with him. I think you saw it in occult practices in Pasadena, California at the time. And I think that technology's been around for many thousands of years. And was it possible that the same non-terrestrial entities communicating with creating religions in the Near East, and that's really going to be a hard one for Christians to get their mind around. Because then it says, what's Yahweh? Is Yahweh one of these characters? Well, you're going to have to figure that out. Is God in all realms? Yeah. But then what about lesser gods? Why was God so jealous of all these other deities like Baal and Moloch and Ishtar? Why was he so threatened by them? What were they, lesser gods that just were physical beings that had technology and they looked like gods to people and they were flying all over the place as non-human entities, which we know we have biologics now. We have testimony in Capitol Hill that says so. Well, they didn't just come on the scene yesterday. They've likely been around for thousands of years. And that means you have to go back and reevaluate everything in archaeology. And these archaeologists that have received a lot of good accolades by the New York Times for their books, they got published by peer reviews, putting out stuff like what's at this museum saying, why would someone forge the Holy Stone? Here's a factual statement based on our political assumption. Talking about non-terrestrial entities, non-human entities manipulating the human race all over the world during a particular period. Why is it that from 500 BC to about 500 AD, that 1,000 years, we have all this growth? And I would say it's from time dilation because you had non-human entities coming and going. They needed markers on the ground to line up with the stars because their Apple Watch on their spaceship would be localized time wherever they came from or whatever time was in their time manipulated vehicle. How do they know when they are? How can they record? Yeah, we were in this phase of Earth's existence. We know it because our computer on our spaceship told us so. That's not going to work. You got to mark stuff on the ground so that you can get out and say, hey, shaman, good to see you again. It's only been about 2,000 years since I've seen one of your folks here. Hey, let's go out on this thing you built and see when the moon rises so I know what year we're in on Earth. That's what my premise is on all these earthworks, is that a large group of people were inhabiting Earth at the time. Not that they were giants as in monsters, but likely they came from an area, settled areas all around the world. They were very tall because they had a different gravity to the places they came from, which is another premise of my book. I very much believe that Mars, we will find when we go to Mars that we came from Mars. And there's a reason why early science fiction was so obsessed with Mars. I think we're going to find that we have a lot in common with Mars. So, I just said a whole lot of stuff, and yeah, my book will get into much more detail about it. That's a lot to unpack here. Yeah, I'll see if I can do some podcasts and do some other media out there talking about some of this stuff to kind of talk up the book. But I'm this is long, but I'm very excited about it. It's a lot to say, and I don't know that anybody's really said it like that, but that's where I'm at. And that's my premise, and that's my contribution to this dialogue. I think the archaeologists are filling in their political motives. I think David Wyrick was probably had gone a little crazy and probably had voices telling him all kinds of things to do under his heavy utilization of a painkiller. And I think non-human intelligences have been manipulating the human race from the very beginning. And just because we're talking about it now that Trump's unleashing a lot of UFO classified data, people don't know what to do with it, quite like these poor people working at the museum had a copy of the Wilmington tablet right in front of their face, but they didn't know what to do with it because they don't have a reference point for it. They come, they work, they go, and they know what's hot, what's not. They know what people who come to the museum come to see these pieces. They know what those are, but they don't know what this is because no one's come to see the Wilmington tablet because it's in a museum in Columbus and not out in the middle of Amish country where you can get a replica. But the curators of the museum certainly understood it. That's why they made copies of it. And I was rummaging through their pile of stuff on their shelf, which they didn't even know what it was. They had this right next to postcards, and they thought it was a coaster. There's a lot of people that have interactions with non-human intelligences on the same sort of motivations. inspire people daily. And if it doesn't jump out and bite them, they're not going to know what to think about it. And a lot of what I just said on this little introduction is going to take a lot of people a lot of time to digest. That's why you write a book. And I can talk about it. We can talk about it on podcast, and we can do segments out there on air and have some interesting conversations. But for this kind of thing, you really got to sit and read it. And you got to go through it paragraph by paragraph. You can't just go do an audible, although I'm sure there'll be an audible for it. It'd be a little while. It's going to take a while to put it all together because this is a big project. I mean, this is a that's why I say I think the movie Disclosure Day gave me permission to go talk about this stuff. I've thought this stuff for a long time, but the evidence is so obvious when you go to one of these sites and you see what archaeologists have to say, and then what people who are very biblically grounded, like David Wyrick was, and that this was found in a mound. And then no one's ever really explained, well, how do you know indigenous people didn't have advanced mathematics? How'd they get it? Well, they were smart. They're cool. That's why it was such a crime that America was created and pushed them off. That's the end. We're archaeologists. We just told you indigenous people were smart. Look what they made. Buy a t-shirt, which I did because I love the place. Buy a t-shirt. Here's some cool forgeries. Buy them. But we're not going to offer anything substantial new to the conversation. I am going to, and when I sat down in front of that exhibit and my shoulders sort of slumped, and I sort of looked at my daughter and my wife, and I was like, I've got to be the one to talk about this, because on the media for Disclosure Day, and Anna Paulina Luna, who I like a lot. There's some of those Congress people I like a lot. I love Warren Davidson. I like people who think free and who work in Congress, and I throw Anna Paulina Luna and Warren Davidson kind of the same breadbasket because they're definitely outside the boxers, and I like them personally. Yeah, they can go on and do stuff on Jesse Waters' show, but we're just not getting very deep here. And I think the proof of non-human intelligence communicating with multiple cultures over a vast period of time is the story behind the Holy Stones. From this era, 50 BC, 100 BC to 50 AD, Second Temple period in Jerusalem, while the Essenes were writing before the Romans decided to destroy the Jewish people one final time and just destroy their temple and get rid of them in 70 AD. The Essenes were putting together the Dead Sea Scrolls, which then showed validity for the Bible being the greatest and most accurate historical record the world has anywhere. So you can't blame anybody who's feeling a little homesick from Europe from wanting to put traces of the Bible onto the world they're living in. And that's surveying these mounds and thinking, you know what? I want to see Christianity find a foothold in North America. And then you have a secular science that was created because of Fraser's golden bough. A bunch of institutionalists, Marxists, a bunch of crazy guys got together and took the science to a level. And I love archaeologists. I love people who dig and study. I like Francis Pryor. I even like this guy, Kenneth Fetter. He's one of the people that goes against David Wyrick. I think his books are good, and I think his statements are smart. I think he's open-minded enough to take in new information, even though it's hard to get through his noggin to get there. I don't think he's close to it if you can give him compelling evidence. There's a lot of good people that work in the archaeology fields that I really like. That's why I don't want to be that person to say, guys, I know you dig in the dirt. It takes a special person to dig in the dirt and figure this stuff out. But do you see these files coming out of Capitol Hill? These guys were flying around in spaceships and interacting with all these cultures. You've got to go back and rethink all your theories. Everywhere. Including Windover. There's your proof. 8,000 years ago, we need to be studying archaeology off the coast of Florida, the Gulf side, for hundreds of miles out, and seeing what the evidence tells you. Whatever it tells you, it tells you. But don't be surprised if you don't find more of this stuff in those mounds. And no, there's no David Wyrick there to put them there. Go dig into those mounds and find out what they are. Don't hide behind the NAGPRA, the Indian Native Americans Graves Repatriation Act, to not have your peer-reviewed studies scrutinized out of existence. Don't be afraid. Go dig, be bold, and let new information take you where the information takes you. And my statement is, it's probably going to take you to non-terrestrial entities where giving shaman information that they use to build their entire civilizations. And that's likely the truth that nobody's talking about, and they need to be. And that's what my book, The Politics of Heaven, proposes, and that's why it's something you got to slow read it. You got to read it word by word. It's going to take time. It's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to watch documentaries about it. It's another thing to read it word for word on a park bench somewhere isolated from the noise, because it's one that takes time to sink in, because it's so outside the human experience that I think, just like those poor people working in the gift shop, if they didn't know, if the Wilmington tablet didn't come out and bite them right in the face, say, "I'm the Wilmington tablet, feed me a chicken nugget," which is what I fed them, fed it fish, and my grandkids thought I was hilarious. It's like, I love this thing so much. Mwah. If I wasn't already married to your grandma, I'd marry this, because I love it so much. So awesome. One of the greatest finds I've ever found in a museum. The Wilmington tablet. Mysterious Adena people. 50 BC, 500 BC, whatever it turned out to be. Mysterious markings on there. How could it be Baal on there? That's a Canaanite god of fertility. Why would they have similar gods in the Adena culture as they have in the Canaanite region that Yahweh said, "Destroy my chosen people"? Why was he so against those people? And why do you see similar deities on the Wilmington tablet? Because non-terrestrial intelligence were manipulating cultures all over the world through psychedelic use. And that's what nobody wants to admit, because they want to go out and have a beer and not think that some spiritual entity is going to jump in them and run their life and take over their body. But it happens all the time. How many times have you seen drunken people that don't act like themselves? Something else is in there. And it happens a lot. Happens much more often than anybody wants to admit. Anyway, a lot to unpack. The Wilmington tablet. Anyway, Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. And I think you will love, when it comes out, The Politics of Heaven. Because the politics of heaven to destroy Yahweh's creation, God's creation, his son and everything, the concept of sacrifice, and the need to have the 10 Commandments in the mounds of Ohio on display at the wonderful Johnson Hermrick. It's a hard word. I never get that last name right. On display at the Johnson Hermrick House Museum. Anybody can go see them. I suggest going to see them, judge for yourself. But I don't agree with the archaeologists on this one at all. I think they're only getting a piece of the story. And the real answer is in the thing they don't want to think about. And that's that non-terrestrial intelligences have shaped human societies from the very beginning. And they have to go back and rethink everything they've made an assumption on from the very beginning, which they're not going to like to do. But that's where it's all headed. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.
In the age of disclosure, you must understand the politics of heaven. Coming soon.
Coming soon, the politics of heaven in 2027. A treasure hunt through heaven and all human history.